Now we can really get started.
And the ISD too.
Oh, I didn't know that's not.
Antelope Estates, right?
What? Even in that Canino?
But there's also an MW.
Oh, no. Let's start. But it's going to take them a minute to get set up, so let's start.
Okay, let's finish.
It's going to take them a minute to get.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started. My watch stopped today, so let's find out what the clock now. You guys ready?
It is 9:08 a.m. Saturday, September 17, 2011, and the Board of Trustees workshop is now in session. Mr. Chair, we have a quorum present, and this meeting has been duly called and notices posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551.
Thank you. Trustees, we're going to get started. We're a little bit behind, but I guarantee we're going to finish on time. Right, Mike?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just calling you out. Listen, before we get started, I know we don't have a flag in here, but I do want us to take a moment of silence. If you have not heard, if you have not read, Adam Medrano had a death in the family yesterday, and that's why he's not here today. So if we can please stand for a moment of silence and especially remember the Medrano family. Thank you. And in the absence of a flag, I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Trustees, today what we want to try to accomplish is to work towards the selection of a search firm, or at least the selection of search firms that we're going to bring in on Tuesday for an interview. But before we do that, I would like for us to once again try to galvanize ourselves around assessing the board. We've tried this a couple of times and can't quite seem to get everybody here at the same time when we need to do it. But we're going to try to move forward with that. We also want to look at some policies that talk about our vision and our philosophy and things of that nature. I think it's important that we look at that because whomever we bring in as the superintendent needs to have some idea about where the board wants to go. And I think the search firm needs to have an idea about where the board wants to go. So we're going to look at a couple of policies from the A section, AE and AEA local. And then we're going to spend time looking through the manual, the binder that has all of the search firms that have submitted proposals. Just so that you know, every search firm that proposed is in the binder. We didn't leave anyone out. The purchasing department did do a ranking that they would normally do, but I only asked that as resource information, okay? The purchasing department is not telling us which one we should hire. That is what we're going to do. Now, I think we have about 7 or 8 that have submitted proposals. I would like for us to get down to 2 or 3 that we bring back in on Tuesday for an interview. That's my suggestion, because I don't think we want to hear from all 7 or 8 of them. Okay? And when we finish today, hopefully we'll have that group of people, group of search firms selected, and I guess Dino, somebody will notify the ones that we'll call in for Tuesday.
Yes, I have purchases on standby that after you guys make a selection, I'll make a phone call, and then they will make their phone call.
Okay, good, thanks. Okay, I'd ask Adam and Carla to walk us through the board development. Gina, are those your 2 people? Okay. Where's Delisa? You guys need to work on getting your people here. There's a tab that says framework for board development. Dino, it's your fault.
Yeah, you may want to start with another section.
Well, in essence, I'll try to wing this. I was really trying not to talk too much today.
Are you feeling bad?
No, I was just trying not to talk too much. The last two times I talked so much, I was so tired when I finished. I'm like, why am I working so hard? But I'm also trying to do shared leadership. So
But this framework thing actually has a lot to do with the direction we're going to go with our superintendent.
it does. It talks about the vision, the structure of the board, and accountability issues, advocacy and unity. Pretty much I just want us to start thinking along the line of how we work as a board, how we organize as a board, how we function as a board. I don't want us to get to the point, where we are splintered, if you will. But if we go to the assessment, we're going to try this live and in person. Wait, who's supposed to be doing the assessment?
For school board, is there any way, is it possible, I don't know if this is following this tab or board assessment, that before we really start the superintendent search, I know Edwin did it, but we have maybe a facilitator talk to us about, facilitate for us about what we're looking for in a superintendent, and maybe we give our top 10 negotiables and what's non-negotiable. So when the search firm looks, like I know for me, a non-negotiable is I want someone who communicates very well. Your may be something totally different, but we kind of have an idea of the 9 board members of what we would like to see in a leader for the next district.
They actually go through that process.
The search firm would do that?
The one that we select, they will speak to us individually to find out what it is that you're looking for in a superintendent.
But
What
I
is
think
Bruce looking for?
I think in what she's saying is we need to have that up front before we even bring somebody in. I don't want to bring in and then sit there and have a dialogue with them and say, this is what we expect. Shouldn't we have that pretty much hammered out before we hire somebody?
That's one way to do it.
Suggestion, since we're not going to spend time doing this framework.
I was just saying, just said,
why not
because
do
Mike's view, he may want somebody that's a business minded, and that may be something I want, but then the 9 of us, so then that person can say, board members, this is what I heard you say, this is what, the non-negotiables, and then a negotiating one may be, I could care less if he's a good educational person, long as he hires somebody under him that understands education. Is that making sense?
I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with both of y'all. I think that's a good idea. I don't know if that's where we are on the agenda.
I didn't know if the board framework would
Board
cover that.
assessment, yeah.
No.
Well, this is the
This is
first,
talking about the board itself.
What about the part E, discussion of superintendent search process, or F,
With that,
or
okay.
G?
Yeah, so.
Okay, that's where it will be.
It could come
Well,
down
not to
there.
discuss, it may be at another workshop. I
It
was
can
just
come
saying.
down there. Now, who do we ask to help out with the board assessment?
Oh, that's Edwin.
Okay.
Okay.
And how many of y'all actually did your board assessment several months ago? Okay.
The one, I did the one online as
talking about the
well.
one online.
Yeah, was it ever compiled? Do we have the number, the data?
I don't think it was online. It was on paper.
It was on- this was on paper.
I emailed it to Dr. Mike.
Oh, I did the one
Back in
online.
There was something online that
That wasn't the same thing.
That was like a personality
It's a
assessment.
personality. I'm talking about this board self-assessment.
I did it, but I don't know where it is now.
must have read that email.
Well, I did mine back in June, and when I looked at it, it's like what I feel now as to opposed to what I felt back in June. I mean, it's really 2 different things, and I'm not so sure that,
Yeah, but you're a woman.
yeah, I can change my mind.
Wow. And
You know, Bruce, I will remember that. You're 65.
I actually have a very similar thought. I mean, for whatever reason, I feel like we as a team are kind of coming together pretty well.
Yeah.
I'm very pleased with the direction that this board is headed as a whole. I don't know where everybody else is, but that's, in terms of the individual questions on this assessment, there's a variety of things that we can discuss there, but
Well, Edwin and I we were looking at it, and in your little booklet that you've got, if you'll turn to that tab and go to the third page, under where it says Board Assessment, 3 or 4.
And it says identifying critical issues for the team.
Because we thought, at this point, rather than look back at where we've been, let's go forward. What do we want to do? And we thought if we could just identify like what everybody feels like would be team critical issues, and how we can improve it.
One team critical issue is agree to disagree. Yeah, I'm not gonna.
Oh, well, sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, I was gonna.
I like that a lot.
What we'll do is read what they define as critical issues, and then based on that, kind of have to help guide our discussion. So it says, so the question is, what are the critical issues confronting this team today that if left unattended would keep us from doing our job as a team effectively during the next year? And they define the critical issue as a trend, event, development, or situation that keeps us as a district leadership team from reaching our vision and accomplishing our mission. And AEA and AE have all that stuff. And I think it'd be good to have a good, thorough discussion of those things because, well, we did AE and AEA local 2 years ago as part of RGA. Lou, Nancy, and I are the only RGA left over, so it'd be good to have that discussion and see if it's changed. It probably has, of what are critical. So what may be a positive issue, an opportunity, or a negative one, a threat in terms of a critical issue? Another critical definition, part of the definition, is it an issue requiring resolution because of its impact on the governance team's effectiveness and ability to accomplish its mission, and it is generally broad in scope and impact. It usually affects everyone. So again, what are the critical issues? And I know you started with one, but I just wanted to...
The critical, say that last critical issue again, Elvin.
It is generally broad in scope and impact. It usually affects everyone.
So one critical issue that affects will be academic achievement in our school, because that affects the taxpayers, the public, the parents, and the students.
Right, and so it's a trend, event, development, or situation. So clearly, it's a situation we're in, right?
Yeah.
We need to,
Yeah.
We have 33 schools that have been identified by the state.
Well, I think your first one is right on point too, because this is talking about what issues affect this team, and so our ability to discuss things civilly and disagree on certain items, but continue to move forward even when we disagree. I think that's kind of critical in a democracy.
And also, when they agree to disagree, you have to kind of step back and look within yourself to find out, okay, ultimately why you're here.
Right.
You're here, and so am I disagreeing with you because of some personal, or I'm disagreeing with you because how is it going to move the agenda to help students? So your point may be a good point, but we all have to continuously do self-evaluation of why am I disagreeing with you on this issue? And so make sure we keep the students first. And when we're agreeing to disagree or talking about an issue, how is this going to help the student? Ultimately, maybe if I disagree, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think the students first is another one. I mean, we have to make our decisions motivated by what's going to improve student achievement.
And that's why are you here?
And notice that it's talking about the team, meaning the board. So we might all have individual points about academics or about students or whatever it may be, but how do we work as a team so we have one voice, one thought that's being pushed instead of, well, they decided. No.
But if we all keep the students first and understand and ask, why are we here? Well, it's because we want our students to have great options, great opportunities, and a great education. Mm-hmm. So let me maybe back down because I'm fighting this issue for another reason. It's not fighting it for the students. So I think as a team, if we step back and say, why are we here? We're here for the students. We exist because of the students, the school district.
Mm-hmm.
But what I hear Lou saying, though, is that what I hear Lou saying, usually my voice carries pretty good, is that whatever issue it is, if we, as a majority, agree on an issue, is that what you're saying? Mm-hmm. And we have to make sure we're not, in other words, I'm not going off all by myself saying, hey, I think we ought to do X, Y, Z. because I'm only one voice, and I think that's the key, is that the board is only the board as long as you speak as one voice. So I think we have to be careful about just going off on our own little tangent. Did I?
I know we're skirting around this big elephant, but we also need to speak as one voice, and when we talk about the decision, it needs to be made that the board made the decision. And I would like for us to get to the point where we stop providing negative comments about the decision. I mean, we've made the decision, now let's move on. Been on the board now my 11th year, I guarantee you I've lost some votes. Most I have forgotten about. But once you make it, once the board has decided on the course of action or on an item, let's move on. We may come back to it later, but let's move on.
Yeah, I think that's completely critical, because there's so much of the perception of the district as a whole stems from the perception of us as a team, which is somewhat unfair, since we're unpaid volunteers. We're the only non-employees of the district, and yet the district's health and future is judged upon us. But it makes sense, because of course the buck stops with us. And if we can't agree to disagree and move on and accept the decisions of the majority, then people will look at this district as non-functional, and that hurts our ability to recruit talent. That hurts our ability to get parents engaged. That hurts our ability to educate kids.
I think the two entities of a school district that greatest impact the perception that people have of the district is the board and the superintendent. If the board does something idiotic, crazy, or says things and comes out in the public, then it gives the district a bad impression. If the superintendent does something crazy, it makes it makes the district look bad. A teacher can do something every once in a while, a student can do something, they'll publish it one day and we've forgotten about it. But when the board does something, it stays around for a while. So we as a board need to work together as a team, as a group, as one entity as much as possible for the sake of the district.
Well, I want to echo Lou's comments on that, because it's been my experience that, I think it's critical that the community see us as working together. And part of it is, I know Nancy and I discussed this, is the effective group of time. Where we spend time on, when we're having our meetings, our public meetings, where we spend our time, that's what the public thinks we're spending our time on. So if we spend our 3 hours of a meeting talking about something that has nothing to do with student achievement, nothing that's going to cause any kind of progress, that's the message it sends, that that's our priority. What we name things, stuff that has no bearing whatsoever on student achievement. That is what we need to stop. RGA, one of the things that we did during the Reform Governance and Action program was we actually measured. We actually had a timekeeper measuring the amount of time we spent on issues having to do with student achievement versus all kinds of other stuff. There is the business of the district. We do have to conduct the business, the business aspects, contracts, buildings, things like that. But if we spend 5 minutes on data and student achievement and, some kind of new effort that's being made by the district, and 3.5 hours talking about all sorts of other things, that's what the community sees, and they would be correct in having that impression. So, and the other, so that was one. And the other thing, also along, I think, as everybody said it's respecting each other's time. We're all volunteers. We're all doing this, and when people repeat themselves 2 and 3 and 4 times, like we heard you the first time, and I try my best to not repeat myself. And if I do, just somebody call me out and say, Flores, you're repeating yourself.
I was at the dentist the other day, and I've been going to this place forever. Lois has been going there, and I was talking to the receptionist on the way out, and I don't know how we got. Obviously, the school board comes up periodically when I go there, and it was really funny. And she said something about, well, at least you get paid for it, and I said, no, we don't get paid for it. And she looked at me. And she says, why would you do that? Why would you even consider and not get paid. And I said, well, that's the way it is, so. Anyway, but you're right, people have all sorts of misunderstanding about what we do and why we do it.
Do y'all think that it would actually be useful to ask board services maybe to time keep us on some of the meetings, and give us an assessment periodically?
Uh-oh, Dino's already
He's
got
got
his
it
thing
going
out.
right now.
Just in terms of, have them break down specific topics, or at least major topics, and have them send it to us in a board update. Y'all, just as an FYI, y'all talked about this for 30 minutes, this for 10
We
minutes.
have to give them a very clear understanding of what we mean.
Well,
I mean, it's doable.
an easy way to do that,
Doesn't the TEA monitor count the stuff?
Well, yeah, she has said that a few times.
but an easy way to do that is make note of the time that we start talking about
An
item
issue.
A. What time do we start talking about item B? The difference is how much time we spend on item A. And just mark the time that we start on each agenda item.
I mean, I think that might be useful, just as kind of it's a metric for us, Did I or did I not, grandstand for a half an hour? So sometimes you don't realize when you do it
Yeah,
yourself.
Let me
right.
interrupt though, because on our computer, that computerized system that y'all installed, when they first started using it, it actually timed us out, right? I mean, when you started talking, it would start clicking out the time. I mean, why couldn't we just use, I don't know why we stopped doing that. We just use it for like 1 or 2 meetings, but perhaps we need to go back and use that.
Right, what Trustee Bingham was referring to is when you're in the boardroom, the auditorium, you have
Right.
the ability that when a trustee wants to speak, they press a button that says they want to speak, and then the timer starts. If you want to do that again, we can look at, exploring that again. But it's up to the trustees.
If that doesn't work in the board briefing room, we'd have
But
to do
at
something.
least
Well,
it would
we
work
can-
in one arena.
But if that's what you want to do, we can make it happen.
What do y'all think about that?
Doesn't bother me. Fine with me.
I think, at least it would help us to become more aware of, and then I'm sure that once you have that in there, you could probably break it down to what topic we were on at that particular time.
And after 3 minutes, it goes,
So the critical issues we've identified so far is, agree to disagree and move forward. Academic achievement, students first. Effective use of group time and stay on target with vision, mission.
Can anybody think of, I mean,
And I was going to point out something when I was reading this the other day. I was driving to a soccer game back. on
You were reading
Sunday.
while you were driving? For sure.
Yeah, well, actually, I do that all the time. No, I was reading these questions, and I was driving through the Grove, in fact.
oh, thanks, in my neighborhood.
And there was a big sign on the side of the road that said, Mesquite School starting from 100,000.
Oh.
Have you seen that sign?
There was a sign on the
Yeah.
I-30 along.
Yeah,
And they're also
on
the
635.
5-star rating.
Yes, I pulled their stuff.
And I was thinking to myself, wouldn't it be awesome if we could have, Dallas schools starting from, why can't we?
30,000.
Yeah,
No.
down in the Grove.
what is that? What do you mean starts at?
You're talking about housing.
Basically saying if you move into Mesquite, you
housing.
can buy a house for this much
Oh,
and get
Yeah,
Mesquite
the
schools.
real estate.
In other words, you can get a great school, and that's how they advertise. I mean, there's a big sign on, and it's not a Mesquite ISD sign.
So realtors putting
It's a
that out.
realtor sign.
Realtors put it up.
There's
The
one out
realtors
on
put it up.
there's also one on 635
Yeah.
near Elam there.
That's the Grove, isn't it?
Well,
Is that the Spring? Well, Fall
yeah,
Springs
it's Fall
Elementary is
Springs.
going right there, right? On Elam?
Balk Springs Middle School.
Middle school.
Yeah, it's going on Cheyenne between Elam
I
and
play
Cheyenne.
right next to
Yeah,
the
it's right there where you play soccer.
Is that how you pronounce that street?
Cheyenne?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I never knew.
it's an Indian name.
Apaches.
Okay, so do we want to do what, the other exercise? The other part of this exercise was to list 1 to 3 activities that this team could do during the next year that would best address the critical issues identified and contribute to improved team performance.
Look at the data.
Well, should we have maybe I don't know, we did this at one point, didn't we have some kind of, we had a retreat at one point where we actually, Denise Collier kind of worked us through all the data that we
Yeah, we
had.
did.
And basically, we had Cecilia Oakley up here. And we
So
kind of
you
went
need to
through
know
all
where
the
you
kind of
are,
critical.
so you know where you need to go. You need to know where you are. And we received that one pager,
Mm-hmm.
3rd grade through 11th grade of commended. And I think we need to raise the expectation, stop saying, okay, well, the STAR test is going to make us raise the expectation. by the state, but raise the bar and really look at the data and be real about the data. The math director did something really good at our meeting. She tracked students from, we lose our students in the 9th grade, but she tracked a cohort of students all the way down from 9th to 12th grade to figure out, you received it, but it was really good, one sheet, data sheet that she gave. And she talked about looking at data and being real about it. And we have to stop hating to people. My bottom line is, you're not doing the job from the top. I think, as old people say, it flows up. I don't think it flows down. It flows up. We keep putting the burden on the teacher, the teacher, the teacher. But if you have an ineffective teacher in the classroom, that means that an ineffective principal didn't rate that teacher. Then that ineffective principal, the ED, didn't hold that person accountable. Then who's above that person? So it kind of like a lack of accountability is going down. So as a team, we need to be real about policy that is fair, legal, and consistent. And so that's what I want us, we put all the burden on the teacher, but then who's keeping that ineffective person in the room? Who's not going in there building capacity in that person or building a team in the school? It's the principal's not doing it. Then who's not holding the principal accountable? It's the ED. So we have to start looking at the total picture of accountability and not just saying you.
Well, I mean, I haven't seen that data, but maybe a group exercise where we go and all of us get to see it.
Yeah.
Well, we gave the one page out. They sent the one page in of
Well, one page is good as a summary, but I
the
think.
summary of the test.
But
And then
to
we,
see us as a whole.
Oh,
I
to
don't
see
think
us
it's
as
one little sliver of math versus.
well, no, she did. No, the data we submitted a couple months ago was third through math, reading, and science test, and how many kids passed it. And then we just got the AP data, and she's getting ready to do that on one sheet. Because if you're saying 90% of our kids are passing the tax test, there should be a whole lot of kids making 3 and above on the AP. If we have that kind of results on tax, we should have that result, kids in advanced placement classes as
So
well.
it sounds like we just need some more in-depth conversations about student achievement. Where are we successful, where are we not so successful?
And what are we doing?
And maybe even look at some data or practices about employees. Every year, we complain that we only have a few non-renewals when we have a very high percentage of teachers that are getting exceeds or exemplary, professional or exceeds, but yet our test scores are down, so there's a disconnect, and we might need to sit down and talk about it. Is there really a disconnect, or if there is, then why? And I know we spend some time talking about the finances, and sometimes I think we need to spend more time talking about finances. A few years ago, when we ran short, and we went back and looked at all of the reports that we received that whole year, and everyone that looked at it said that it looked good.
Yep.
But we missed the ball somewhere. So those are 3 big areas for me. You're looking at student achievement, how are we progressing, looking at employees, and then looking at the finances.
But we're on that right track with the STAR Commission. I think outside people telling us, you can take a little better when all the outside people who work on personnel, so they can kind of help us, because we're going to have to fix downtown personnel department in order to start getting those top people and working. So with the STAR Commission, and then we're looking at teacher evaluation as well as evaluating all. So I think we're on the right track, because I think the STAR Commission is important, and the teacher evaluation is important, because you got to get all those instruments in place in order to identify the effective employee.
Bernadette, could I take what you just said, and instead of saying teacher evaluation, say
Employee, yeah, we're doing employee
that
evaluation.
way, because you brought up something I thought was very powerful when you talk about it has to go from bottom up, but you've got to evaluate not just the teachers, but the principals and the EDs, they all should be
Teacher
accountable.
assistants.
So that's why I like to say employee.
Oh, yeah, I meant to say
Well,
employee. I just don't want to.
Houston saw that when they developed their, campus employees, the eval, it just tells you a lot about the principal, tells you about the people on screen. So can I say something real quick? So on this, I think it would, especially as we're developing this tool, the employee evaluation tool, it'd probably be a good idea to, as this work goes on during this year, is maybe have a workshop or two just to let everybody know where stuff is. I mean, right now it's at the design phase. It's very early on. We're going to be talking about it at every board briefing throughout this year. But at some point, it may be good to just have the people come and just visit with us and say, okay, this is where we are, this is the design. I think without any doubt, the most controversial thing would be the growth. What are we using to evaluate growth? And it would be really important that this board says, yes, we are comfortable with, there are dozens of ways of doing it, but which one is the one that we think is most fair? And it has to be understandable to everybody.
And then to link on to what Bernadette was saying earlier, I think that in everything we do, we've got to always go back to the data on everything, because I think there's probably lots and lots of nice people in the district. I like most of the people I meet, but the bottom line is, does the data support what they're doing for the job that they're supposed to be doing? And I think that's where it's really difficult, because we have some principals and administrators who, I think they let the personality of the people overshadow what the data is really telling them. And that's why, like Lou said, on those reports we get, everybody's doing a heck of a lot better than our test scores are. So I think we have to continually go back to the data.
And become a no-excuse district, too.
So can I kind of throw the skunk into the jury box? And another activity we may want to consider, again, just because that's the question, is what activities, is what is our role as a board? Sometimes I feel, and certainly the TA monitor feels, if you read our last report, that we're probably exceeding.
Do you guys read those reports?
I do.
There's a lot of information there.
I read them.
There's a lot of information there.
And she was not very happy with, she feels like the board members are leading too much of the discussion and, not letting the district people do their job. And so that may be something that, I know that RGA beat, again, the three of us, beat up on quite a bit about what is our role as board members, being that we are a policy board and not an operations board.
Just so you know, I don't mind board members, individual board members, leading discussion about an issue so that we can, as a board, come together on changing policy or changing directions. I think she took a hit at you.
Yeah, I did too.
I didn't agree with it.
But that, and he can't say why he did what he did.
Well, yeah, well, but see, if a board member comes up with an idea, I'd rather hear it from the board member's perspective, because that's the person that's putting it on the table. Administration may offer some administrative comments or information about it, but who best to explain what Mike is talking about than Mike?
But it also goes
Well,
back to our level of employee evaluation, and we have to be honest about that. There's some people in leadership positions that shouldn't be there because they don't have that capacity to be able to present an idea, take an idea from our subcommittees, take that idea and bring it take the vision and implement it into action. So that's when you have to get a good evaluation plan in place that you have, because one of my frustrations on the board, my 18 months is that, 20 months now maybe, is that staff can't answer questions. And I'm sitting there saying, well, you get paid to do this. And in a board, we need to know the answer and you don't know it. I mean, that's the problem. You get paid to do a job. You come to work and you do the best job that you possibly can. So it goes back to evaluating employees in a fair, legal, consistent way. And if you can't handle it, like Mike said last week, fall on the sword. I just caught that after going home. But we need to, if you're not the person for that job, we need to figure out a way to transition you out and get a person who can do the job.
Well,
and
now,
board members would not have to answer your question.
Now,
That's not our role.
yeah.
No, but the superintendent needs
his
to,
role.
I'm not saying superintendent, but our role is to hire a superintendent who can hire people because, not a likability, but because you are good at your job. And I want you to come here and do a good job. So that's our role as a superintendent, and I think we have, past superintendents have hired people just because I like you, not because you're good. I want somebody who's good.
Now, let me clarify. I think board members can bring something to the table
but I think it's up to administration to make it work.
Yeah, they've
Right,
got
and
execute.
We
But we
bring an
haven't
idea
seen
to the
But many a
table.
time, things have been brought up, and like she says, they don't implement it. They find every excuse in the world, or pretend that they don't know how, or, you know, and things don't get put in place.
What a particular policy. I talked to staff about the policy of the something, and they kept telling me, you can't do this policy, you do this policy, this. I mean,
So
you
what-
feel it all the time, and I'm like, okay, can you tell me what we can do?
So what activity are we going to work towards improving our function?
Hire a great
Can
superintendent.
I offer two comments? So one, on the point of data, which I think everybody's talked about a little bit, an organization this large cannot be effectively overseen without a devotion to sort of metrics-based oversight. I mean, we have to.
Data?
Yeah, data. But we're a district that is data-rich, but I think somewhat information-poor. We have a sea of data, and we have to transform that into sort of useful, actionable information. When I think about our schools have that published scorecard, which takes, 1,000 different data points and kind of breaks it down into demonstrable trends on that campus. And when I look at those published scorecards, I find those to be tremendously valuable. And yet, we don't necessarily look at that on a monthly basis on a district-wide basis, those scorecards. And effectively, the health of our district boils down to those scorecards. But the scorecards have both a summative and formative component to them. So that, some of the aspect of the scorecards we don't know about for a year because we've got to wait for test results. And that's not all that useful from an oversight perspective. So I think we have to have a commitment to developing a set of ongoing metrics that we can use as a board to evaluate the district's progress and sort of meeting objectives. I think that's a very important component that we look at on an ongoing basis, because otherwise what we're talking about is abstract concepts that we don't look at consistently.
Can I piggyback on something you just said? Because we were talking about we have the data, but we're not, there's,
Analysis for.
how does that come on? Because I just found out that when we evaluate our principals, it's based on the previous year's data, but yet that data is not completely done until September. Well, it's not even done now, September. So we could have an ineffective principal who did a terrible job at a school, and yet they're still going to get another whole year
So why is that?
before we could do anything about it. There's something wrong with that evaluation tool.
And I think that's an indication that you're exactly right, that there's something wrong with the evaluation tool. And I think that ties into the new teacher assessment as well. I mean,
Yeah.
if we're going to make our assessment of teachers based upon, say, TAC scores or STAR scores, but those scores don't come out until long after the window for non-renewal, then that's not a good
Exactly.
that's not a good
Everything's
assessment
like a
for
year
us.
behind, and so, I don't know, I think when we're looking at data, maybe we ought to be able to look back at previous 2 years or something like that. I mean, I don't know how accurate or,
But doesn't the data, I mean, when you get data, you got it, so what's the delay? I don't understand.
There-
Are they putting the data in August?
well, because they don't get final, the tax scores, of course, it'll be end-of-year tests. I mean, a lot of it's based on that, but they don't get all that final results in until late August.
It's after the,
But most everybody knows what those.
the
scores
deadline
are
now is going to be close to the
well
end
in
of the school
advance.
year.
Yeah.
If we chose something that approximated it in, say, April or March,
Before the contracts are renewed.
then that's good enough from an evaluative standpoint, and it actually works given our legal requirements of the
What are
cycle
they
of our
doing in
employees.
Houston?
That's what happened, I think, in Houston, is they realized that their assessment scores didn't work with their cycle, and so they had to delay the rollout and the usage of the assessment scores.
I think it's getting better.
But is that the only
I
way
think,
they're rating them?
I do think we need to, as far as activities, I think Edwin is right in that we need to have more sessions looking at data.
Well, the one thing that I was going to suggest is, so from a personal executive coaching standpoint, I've had a bunch of speakers that I've listened to that have talked about managing by metrics, using key performance indicators, KPIs, on an ongoing systemic basis and developing them. And the whole idea is to make them as simple as humanly possible, because you want to spend very little time, gathering the data and all your time on acting on the data. And I think that maybe we can schedule some sessions like that over the course of the year where we get that. And of course, that focus on managing by metrics will then filter down through the organization.
So basically, looking at all this data that we have,
Right.
and figure out
How to make
can
sense
we
of it.
contain it so we can use it.
Right.
Yeah, make it simplified.
So that would be a suggestion that I would
If we're
have.
not using the data, then what are we wasting time and money on gathering it?
That's
Well,
exactly
and
right.
there are a lot of districts like Charlotte that has very good data dashboards. I mean, we talked about it at RGA. I don't know whatever happened to that. I thought we'd passed the policy.
We started, but
And I looked at
Kind
Charlotte.
of fell apart.
I
Well,
looked at Charlotte Mecklenburg too.
my point is that if we every month looked at our dashboards as part of our regular briefing cycle,
I think that's extremely useful.
and this board decides, because this RGA stuff we did was a couple of years ago, so we had what metrics we thought were important, and at the time, finances were a critical issue. Hopefully that is not, hopefully that's under control and managed right now. But it's always critical. But all the other data points that we can be gathering right now, that we can say, hey, where are we with our dashboard? That is data. That's something we can get and look at every month. Now, a whole lot's not going to change from month to month because if you only tax test once a year.
Well, and that's why I think that looking at, there are elements of data that principals use from an evaluation standpoint that are formative. So, for example, office referrals, discipline issues, those kinds of things happen constantly.
Something's
Attendance data, that's a constant kind of churn.
Like discipline, a lot of
yeah.
things at
or
that.
even
So there, we have to figure out what the district uses
Monthly.
that is formative, that will then provide meaningful information to us on a monthly basis as well, and bring that up to our attention on a district-wide basis.
Because in education briefing, we look at the data, and when we're deciding on what to purchase and buy, they're linking it to the data. Third graders, like we know math scores with African American is what hurt a lot of our students, our schools. Hood, just Comstock, it was African American, all of them. So now, when they're buying something, they're looking at how that's going to impact the math score and if it's really beneficial. But then not just to focus on math, we're looking at science and we're looking at writing and looking at the STAR test on what we need to do. Even with curriculum, Jackie's pulled back on curriculum to say we need to wait for the STAR to come out and look. But we're looking at the data. We're going from bottom up. Looking at the data. Well, how is that? Bottom down. Looking at the data and just understanding what we're buying, what we're purchasing through teaching and learning. That's going to help student achievement and teachers ultimately.
so your money is following your need based on the data.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're following our need. We're following what we need based on the data. And so that was, because a lot of stuff we buy, I'm like, okay, how is this helping students? How is this helping teachers? Okay, if this is data saying math is our issue. And so the new math coach is going to hire District 4. Is that out of Houston? Region 4? And they're coming in and they're doing a total audit of the math department before anything's purchased in math. What is the problem with math in the curriculum? So we're auditing that whole department. She's auditing that whole department. But I was very impressed when she said that.
Well, you understand, we haven't had a curriculum audit in a while.
Well, that's what she's getting. She said we hadn't, and so she's doing a curriculum audit of the whole math department, and she's figuring it out. But
Region 4 is coming to us.
she wanted someone that's outside,
I see.
not 10. Who are we under? 10. 10. She wanted an outside person to come in with new eyes to look at our curriculum. So that was her first plan to attack math. But that's the kind of plan that board, because when it comes to the board, we need to support buying that, paying for that audit because it's going to help us in the long run.
Yeah, and
Well, can I ask you, to follow up on this audit, you said something about we haven't done one. I mean, NCEA has been doing one. Are we doing it again this year?
No, they
In terms of
stopped NCA.
I don't think we've done it.
No, they stopped NCA.
I read the
That was
NCEA and
that was our audit.
Yeah,
Are you
they're working with
I guess
states.
I'm looking at something more in-depth.
Region 4 is doing more in
I
depth.
kind of got the impression they were looking at everything more broadly.
Right, of course.
But to look at math, dig down and see if we're doing things right. Same
That's
thing
what
with
Region 4 is going to
science.
do, is dig down and see. And then so Jackie now is going to do science, language arts. So with the STAR test, we can make sure we have curriculum aligned and make sure we're buying things that are aligned. So that's what we're doing in education.
And I think
See, the point I'm trying to make is I think, we can do the individual silo ones, but if the NCAA had been doing kind of the district-wide
They
stuff.
were.
But we're not going to do district-wide stuff.
I don't think we're doing it this year. There was some reason why, I don't know if it was
I mean, I
financial.
understand the budget challenges.
Is it the budget challenge that stopped it? Because it was an outside audit.
Yeah, the
Objective.
NCEA
Public
report, I
and-
remember reading that, and I found it to be incredibly invaluable, but there were so many recommendations that we have yet to implement that.
Well, they tried, well, every year, I mean, from where we were the first year they did it,
Yeah,
to, we improved greatly over the years, but there were some things like developing a proper leadership mechanism to
Right.
bring up leaders. They tried one thing, it failed, they tried something else, it didn't work. I mean,
Right.
if somebody had figured out how to do that perfectly, everybody would be doing it, right? Anyway, so we've kind of run out
Yeah.
of our time on this.
Okay.
So do we have some activities and some critical issues that we're going to work towards? We got a lot of activities.
I'm sorry, there was one other thing that I wanted to talk about, which is, and this is going to relate to our discussion a little bit later, which is what is the role of the board in this? So I'm not talking about the classic line between governance and management. In this case, I'm talking about the board is fundamentally a political body. We are the gateway between the public and the public schools. And we can choose to de-emphasize our political role and as a result put more of that political management responsibility on the superintendent. Because you have to build community capacity. The public has to know what we're doing. We've got to communicate with the public consistently. Otherwise, we're not going to have the support, and our system doesn't succeed without that support. So we can commit to being that sort of outreach body, that communicative body, that political body, or we can say, you know what, we don't have enough time to do this. We want the superintendent to do this. We want the superintendent to fulfill a political management role. And I think that that's important for us in the context of today's conversation about what it is we're looking for in a new soup. Because that one piece, I'm perfectly fine, for example, having the board president as a very large voice in the community, but others of us might not be. And if we want the superintendent to be the one going out to Rotary clubs and giving speeches, and going out to chambers of commerce and giving speeches, and doing all this, and constantly interfacing with the press, you think about how the city is organized, right? And the mayor, who is essentially the same role as our board president, because neither one has operational authority over the district. But the mayor is constantly out there drumming up support for city initiatives. It's not the city manager. Yet I believe that what we have done in the past is historically look to the superintendent to do that. And I'm a little concerned that might just be too much work for the soup. And so the question is whether we would be willing to shoulder that burden collectively on the superintendent's behalf. And that's one of the, when you talk about the role of the board, I kind of wanted to mention that because it's just something that's been in my mind.
So we have a policy.
Yeah, it says the board
The
president.
board president is the
supposed to-
only spokesperson for the board.
For the board, right, but the superintendent is the spokesperson for the district as a whole. And the question is, the issue is, one of our roles, it's from my training in Santa Fe, one of our roles is to build community capacity. We're the civic engagement portion of this district. But that involves specifically planned work. It involves talking to people in our community and not just at dinner parties, but proactively going out and communicating the message of the district. There are 9 of us, and we could theoretically do some of that, and I'm perfectly willing to give the board presidents all the work we want to.
Well, don't get me wrong. Let me tell you, with the Focus 2012, remember there's a portion talking about listening and learning.
Right.
The idea behind that is that the board president or a trustee and the superintendent will go out throughout the district and having meetings to talk to different people. And I'm getting ready to start scheduling those, Kay, just so you know. I want to make sure that I, along with Alan, meet in every trustee's district so that the 3 of us can go out and drum up and talk about the positiveness about Dallas ISD and maybe hear from them, the community, what they think that we're doing very well and what we need some help on.
But I do understand what Mike is talking about when you compare city manager with the mayor. The mayor, it's kind of like, the board president and superintendent, where before the superintendent did all the chambers, all the events and all of that. I can see where is the line? Where's the sand?
Right.
Where's the line in the sand of what's what. And so we want our superintendent, when the superintendent, the new whoever, do we want him to be the going out to all the chambers, communicating all of this, or is that a board president role or board members role to work with the chambers? How does that look? Because the mayor is the face for the city, and you never see Mary Soon, who is basically the superintendent for the city, out at any of the events unless the mayor invites her to them and she's there. Bruce?
I think it certainly would be nice if we have a superintendent that's outgoing well enough to be able to get in front of the public. Problem is, we don't know what we're going to get. I mean, look, when I went through the school system, there was a guy named W.T. White. I don't think I ever saw him. I don't ever think I ever saw him.
His name on her diploma.
Right, that's all. It's just a name on a diploma. I knew who Lee McShann was because he was our representative in that area. We may have the cart before the horse until we find out who's going to be our next superintendent. And I don't really want somebody out there that's just a personality. I want somebody to be able to do the job. I mean, if I don't mind Lou or whoever's board president carrying the load, to represent portions of the district. But again, we don't know.
Well, no, but you have to decide that before, because if that person,
Yeah, you're
if
right.
you want that person to be this PR person, and you interview somebody and you say W.T. White was more quiet, you might not want that person
But
to take the job.
keep in mind, we've had people with that. Wild Bill Rojas, I mean, that's a good example.
Yeah, but that's why as a board, we need to decide what we want. Do we want a person to be?
They didn't know that till after.
But hold on.
In terms of an activity that the board can do, going back to our agenda. So it sounds to me like you would like to have some kind of retreat or some kind of discussion over our communications plan. Because we have had this exact same discussion in this room half a dozen times.
Good.
I can guarantee it.
That's
The
good thing about having no institutional memory.
Yeah.
That's it.
Why don't we do
We've talked
this?
about every single one of the things they all have mentioned. Do we have a plan? How are we going to reach it to the community? We were going to have community sessions, and nobody showed up when we did those.
Yeah.
We had more staff than we had people
Well,
from the community or parents.
and I'll just tell you from my own perspective is I don't conduct community meetings. I go to meetings that are already happening. So I find meetings of realtors, meetings of the Exchange Club, the Rotary Club, the Kiwanis Club, meetings of the Chambers of Commerce, and groups meeting at the library, PTAs that are already meeting. These are where we show up. I don't think it does us much good to say, let's have a community meeting and invite a bunch of people, and then nobody's going to show up. So that if we're going to be effective sort of PR ambassadors, why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is. So let's go where the people already are. If we're going to execute any kind of communication strategy around that. But the philosophical issue is how much should the board play a role in that discussion versus the superintendent? And I think that it's relevant for us to talk about that now because we can build that into the criteria that we evaluate prospective candidates.
Can I
agree.
interject something? Because I think that is something that's going to fluctuate because a lot depends on who your board president is.
Right.
Because if you have a board president that's not real comfortable speaking, then what do? I mean, Lou happens to be very articulate. He can get out before the cameras.
Well, we're going to have to continue to reelect Lou then.
But as
my point is that I think we're going to have to wait and see who the new superintendent is, who the board president, and I think that's going to change.
But I think what Mike is trying to say, let's set the criteria now so that it helps guide who the new superintendent would be or who the next board president would be.
Well, and even as a team, another executive coach of mine says if you have a ball player who can't shoot from the left-hand side of the court, do you take him out of the game or do you just move him over to the right-hand side of the court? So let's say that we have a board president that isn't as good a speaker as we would want them to be, but if we as a group are still committed to it, then some of us can help show up.
Right.
So I think that's part of it is for us to help each other along the way.
It's more of the role than the person or the position. I agree, Mike. We do need to go out and present our face, our picture.
I mean, if we don't present the case, then the case is whatever they think, which may or may not have any relationship with the actual truth.
Well, which brings me back to about In fact, when I first came on the board, I think the public thought Donnie Claxton was the superintendent.
They saw his face.
Of Dallas ISD,
Oh, my
because
goodness.
his face was the one that was always on the news. Okay, am I right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just the general public. I mean, if you're a teacher or somebody in the district, you knew, but the
Well, he
general
just looked a
public
little
thought
bit
Donnie
like it.
Claxton was the leader of the district.
He
So
looked like
you have
Moses.
to be careful. He was just a PR person.
Sometimes we receive talking points
We got some in our
from
packet
from
last
from
week.
administration, so that when we go out to the Rotary Club or the Kiwanis Club or a PTA meeting, we have information that we can provide. We might want to make sure that we get that on a regular basis. Dino, what I did ask the communication department to do, for me at least, is that for every meeting I've asked them to provide me with some highlights of the district, so that throughout the meetings or the briefings, we can talk about some positive things that are going on in the district. And I was very surprised for the last briefing, they gave me quite a bit. And just so happened that we talked about a lot of those things during that briefing. So, Dino, I don't mind if all board members get those every month. I have at least once a month, if not twice a month, before the briefing and before the regular meeting, just so that we can talk about in our meetings some positive things that are going on.
10:03.
Are we past our time limit?
I'm just letting you know it's 10:03.
You have about 10 more minutes if you need to, unless we need to go into something else.
No, we have to.
Well, let me ask you along this now. You read in the paper that, at least in the news, that Mesquite, their board has been recognized, and other boards have been recognized. And some people have asked, how do we as a board know when we are doing a good job? And one way is through recognition from another source, such as CUBE or such as TASB. Is that something that the board wants to look at pursuing?
What do you have to nominate yourself?
No, there's a list of, when I went to Cuba last year, there's a list of things that you have to do, and they give you the list of things as a board you need to become in order to get,
You pretty much have to nominate yourself.
I think it might be useful to look at those criteria, but honestly, I would just prefer to concentrate on doing our job, and if we happen to stumble across, recognition-worthy behavior, then great.
But it shows us
Well, but it may
you've been
help us
effective
guide
board.
our behavior.
Yeah, it helps you
That's
guide
why
your
I'm saying I
behavior.
think it's
Look at the
useful to
criteria.
look at the criteria and kind of think about that as we do it. But and to the extent that influences our behavior in a positive way, then great.
Yeah.
But I'm far more interested in us doing our job well than for us to objective, actually has as an objective to get that recognition.
I see your point. In the past, I don't recall the board ever saying, okay, we're going after this Broad Prize, or we're going after, well, we did say we're going after Broad Prize.
We did do
We did say we were
Y'all
going to do
did
that.
say, road to broad.
It was not a board recognition thing, it was more of a district. I don't think we've ever pursued any kind of recognition for the board itself. But, every once in a while, we need to just see
Well, yeah, I
where we
agree
are.
with what Mike was saying. If we can use it as a blueprint or road, which is fine, but I think our plate's pretty full, when it comes to, we need to concentrate on being successful.
Well, let's face it, with us being like the second biggest guy on the block, we also have the biggest target on our back.
Oh, sure.
So,
But it's a good guide. It tells you what effective board members look like.
Well,
And
that's
it
what
talks
the
about
board
the
is-
I think
governance
it would
and
be
like
good for
that.
us to look
But yeah, it's a great, Houston came and runner-up last year about how board members work with each other. It just grades you on all aspects of governance
Okay.
and just help you understand your role as a board member and how you should be working together.
Isn't Houston and at large now, didn't they?
no.
No, they're second. They were the runner-ups last year, Houston ISD, and then they presented at the Council of Great City Schools, and I went to that, and it was really good of the board members and how they hadn't always been at that point, but how they were able to get to a working relationship.
Well,
It deals with relationships.
Is it the board president that's at large now? Or didn't they?
No.
That's in
No,
Fort Worth.
they're all single members.
I know
They're changing.
Oh,
They have
they
changed.
changed it?
Yeah, that's what I heard. Now, actually,
There's no big
so to be
district
board
with any
president, you have to run at large.
Wow.
Yes,
So
Not Houston.
one
Yeah,
one
it's
It's
additional
Fort Worth.
No,
One-
no, it just changed.
Houston changed?
as far as the at-large president.
They changed that.
So like Paula Harris position and stuff?
What do you mean, in Fort Worth?
Fort Worth, not Houston.
Houston never did
Houston
have
never-
an
Yeah,
at-large.
Houston's always been a non-single member.
Wait a minute, so the large president has to be elected at large, or does they have to be,
In Fort Worth it was.
But it's no longer there, Bruce. They did away with it. Fort Worth was the only district that did it.
oh, okay. Oh, you said Houston did away with it.
Houston
Never had
Houston
it.
hadn't had it since the 70s, though.
Yeah.
One additional thing for us to consider, I think that these kinds of Saturday workshops where we really deep dive into one topic, I think that these are useful. And especially if the topic is related to our own internal assessment. And you think about assessing the superintendent and your leadership team. That kind of thing needs to be an ongoing activity. So, I'm a fan of these kinds of meetings because I think that any time that we as a group can come together and talk about some of these issues, when we don't have, $10 million or $100 million worth of procurement also to approve for the district to continue to function. I think that that's very useful. So, I don't want us to commit everybody else. We're all sort of volunteers, so I don't want to commit everybody else to these Saturday
Wait till you
sessions.
finally get married. and then
Yeah,
see how that works.
That's what I was thinking.
Your wife's going to be saying, you got to do what?
Yeah, my wife actually works Saturday morning, so this is kind of nothing. Or my soon-to-be wife.
You'll know your place.
But anyways, I just wanted to throw that out for consideration because I do think that that's useful. Yeah.
Okay, Dino, one of you guys, make sure we get this.
And let me know if you can't read my writing, okay?
And Board Services has no argument if you want to do any of this Monday through Friday. So moved.
So I don't know, I guess it sounds like we haven't done this board
We're okay.
assessment in a while.
Yeah, well, we just can't seem to quite get onto it. I don't know if I can get all the cats together or what.
Well, maybe let's consider doing it again next month. Just see if we can take another step because I think that this process of self-evaluation.
We'd like to have everybody here, though.
Yeah.
It would be nice.
Having
Well,
5 or 6
good luck
others.
on that.
Well, we might need to have
Well, I don't think
special
Eric's going to
session or
go on
something.
vacation next month, and hopefully Adam will be here.
Yeah. How, we were scheduled for a break at 10:15. We want to take an early break and then come back and start up with Bernadette and Mike. Take about a 10-minute break.
Kay and
Back, let's come back.
Bernadette, the teacher's name is Monty O'Neill. He'll tell you everything you want to know.
Email it to me.
Okay, but keep him at
We want to be sure and welcome Nancy. Nancy is here taking Matt. No, the other Nancy, the morning news Nancy. She's taking. She's sitting in for. Oh, you sitting in for Matt today? Oh, he moved up. He moved up. He left the urban
That's a damn.
and he went to the donut hole.
Donut hole.
Okay, that's all right then. But Tonette, I appreciate you sticking with us while she's writing all that stuff. Well, I think she wrote some of our comments, so trustees, watch your comments. Okay, still moving forward, we just finished talking about what the board will do and how we're going to try to improve ourselves and looking forward as far as our critical issues, our improvement activities, which we have 12 of, and the role of the board, which we have 7. So we're going to look at, Dino, make sure all this gets written down so that every board member that is not here can know what we itemized anyway.
And we've got audio of this that'll go up online, right? So folks can listen to this.
Yeah.
You want this in a board update?
Yes. I want to make sure everyone gets it. And I think you might well get the audio tape, DVD, those board members, in case they want to hear it also. But this is moving still further from the board. Now we're looking at board direction, the board philosophy. So I've asked Bernadette and Mike Morath to look at AE and AEA policies. because that's giving direction from the board standpoint, our philosophy, our vision, our core beliefs. So I've asked him to look at it, and I think it has gone from a 10-page document down to a 2, or is it a 1?
Well, the original policy we did was a 5-page.
It went from 5 to 10 to
Mike
2.
got it down to 2.
Okay, thank you for being efficient. Come on up and lead this discussion then. I think we have.
Well, so, I have to apologize, because after we saw Edwin and Nancy's performance a minute ago, Bernadette and I didn't actually have time to kind of really come together and practice this. Well, you guys are outstanding. So, the whole idea, as Trustee Nuttall and I were talking, you know, as we get into the superintendent search, I think that there's two fairly critical parts of this process that we as a board have to discuss before we're really even ready to start the process. And that is, you know, the first one is really, what is it that we want this district to achieve? What is it that we want this district to do? What are the big goals that we're interested in the district coming together around, and therefore the superintendent coming together around? Some of those are broad goals that don't involve any how, but I've been on the board long enough to know that this board has some very specific opinions on how, which means that we need to kind of be clear about what we want the superintendent to do with the district up front, even before we start hiring the person, because if we don't communicate that vision to the superintendent, then the superintendent's going to come up with his or her own vision, and we're going to come into conflict with that person, because we all have our own ideas on what we want to do. So that's sort of one part of this equation. The other part of this equation is, I think we have to understand what success looks like. So how would we evaluate a superintendent to determine whether or not they're doing what we want them to do? The AE and AEA discussion is devoted just to that first topic, which is, you know, what do we want the superintendent to do? I think separately we need to talk about sort of evaluating the superintendent. Trustee Nuttall's got some great materials on the superintendent evaluation process. But what you have before you, if AE and AEA, for those who, the current copy is in the handout that you have from Board Services. These are the foundational policies of the district. These are, like, everything else kind of stems from these policies, everything that we do, because they are what we as a district really want to commit to from a goals standpoint, what we really believe as a Board of Trustees, and therefore what we want the district to embody. And then what's the major sort of way we're going to go about doing that? And those are those two policies. They tend to overlap. If you read the two current policies, they talk about things that are in both elements of it. The draft that you have in front of you is really just a rough draft. Trustee Nuttall and I haven't had a chance to really go through this and even see eye to eye on all these points. And I would imagine that many of you will have a disagreement on a lot of these points, and that's totally fine. What I wanted to do was just put something out for discussion, because I think if we don't put on paper something that we can agree as a group, then we have no chance of having a CEO come in, you know, our new superintendent come in and do anything for us, because we don't even know what we want them to do. So AE, the way that I've changed the documents here is I've split them up so that AE is focused just on the big picture, you know, beliefs and vision of us as a body, and then AEA is some of the more specific hows. You know, the specific strategies we want this person to try to commit to. So I don't think any of y'all have had a chance to see this before today, because I didn't send it out ahead of time. So I figured we'd spend just a minute to let people kind of quickly read through this, and then we'll open it up to questions. Bernadette, you want to add something?
What I did, I sent to Mike, because we looked at districts who's won, said there are great districts like Charlotte, Mecklenburg, YSLETA in El Paso, Saletta, Miami-Dade, as well as Broward County, to look at how they work with their vision, their mission, their core beliefs. And one thing is, Mike had put a belief and commitment, but that would come out and go just beliefs, and then our core beliefs, and then our core commitment, what we're committed to, and what we believe. And so, did you make copies?
Not of that, no, unfortunately. I have
Because, like,
one.
for instance, if you look at Charlotte McIntyre, one of their core, they say their core beliefs is public education is central in our democracy. So they're saying we believe that everyone deserves a public education. Then our principals and teachers make the critical difference in student achievement. But then what they're committed to is, one thing that's really good is providing a clear theory of action and an effective superintendent to lead its implementation. They're committed to partnering with community members to maximize student learning and ensuring that effective teachers instruct each class. So those are kind of the commitments and key words: providing, operating, giving all students access to well-rounded, rigorous curriculum that is research-based and data-driven. Something we talked about. We want to let people know we're going to start looking at the data.
And so,
And it's one page.
1, 2, 3, 4 of us are only within our second year on the board service. Is that right? So it's the 3 of us plus Eric is still brand spanking new. So we've as a board, we've kind of gone through this exercise in the past, but 4 of us kind of missed out on that, and I thought it was pretty important for the 4 of us to commit to it. And frankly, there was one thing, because a lot of these beliefs and commitments were written down, and we have them in AEA, and we have portions of them in AE. But there was one thing, frankly, that I actually disagreed with in terms of our core beliefs and that we published in the past. And you'll see that forms my very first bullet point. And it says, we believe that educators have the most powerful impact on student achievement. And I just don't think that that's true. I think that we have to hold educators accountable. And educators are, this is the current version of AEA, in case you're wondering where I got that bullet from.
That's the second.
It's the second bullet, that of our employees, absolutely. And I believe that educators make a massive, massive difference in kids' life. But I don't believe that they're the most powerful. I think the most powerful impact on a kid's life is their parents. And that for me, it's not just a philosophical issue, because I think that we as a district have to commit our resources to helping our parents be far more effective with their kids. And so, not to single out one particular program, but there's a program that we have called HIPPY, just as a frame of reference. And this is a program that puts sort of caseworkers out in homes of kids before they get into public school, and focuses really on parental education for those kids, making the parents far more effective. Avance is very similar. I think Concilio does some similar things, and we've got some other programs that are like this. But the reason that I concentrate on HIPPY is because I actually had access to some of the attendance data. And our average rate of attendance for our kids is about 95%, about like 95.3 or 95.8 or something like that, meaning that they miss about 5% of the days of their educational experience.
Mike, how does that match up with teacher attendance?
That's actually a little higher, I think, than teacher attendance.
So student attendance is higher than teacher attendance.
Yeah, that's a topic for a different conversation. But the kids that go through HIPPY, their average rate of attendance is about 1.5 points higher than that. And that over the course of 12 years of your educational experience, that's 360 more hours of education that those kids got. And the reason for that is because we decided to intervene with their parents very, very early in life to make sure that their parents were partners in their educational experience. And so that's a kind of down in the weeds detail, but it comes back up to philosophy. I think that we as a district have to commit to empowering our parents, because I don't think education works without them. And I think that it's important for us to come out and say that. And then it's important for us to commit resources to that.
And also we took the covenants out. I know y'all came from under the commitments and covenants, and
we were already out of it.
We were out one night.
I think Lou's the only one.
Am I the only one?
Well,
So it's been a
still
while
in our
then.
policy that we are under covenant, under the commitments and covenants, so I don't understand why we still have it when we're trying to make all schools equal. So, commitments and covenants came out, because of, it's not, I don't know why.
It's outlived its,
So without commitments and covenants under the current model, all we have is a 3/4 of a page.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, commitments
Okay,
and
which is
covenants
based on
did
what
come
the
out.
code
Well,
I
there's-
read it, and Mike and I discussed it, we're not under it legal, y'all, I mean, it's, I don't know, do y'all know why you kept it in there? After you came out of it?
We just never did it.
It's never been taken.
Ben could probably answer this better than anybody.
Hey, Ben, good to see you.
Sure.
We're gonna make him work for this page.
Those commitments and covenants were a piece of evidence used in the lawsuit when Dallas was under a desegregation order and under supervision of the court. And as that was presented to the court as a reason why, we should no longer be supervised by the court, along with a lot of other evidence. And that court order allowed for the school board to revisit those issues 3 years after the suit was dropped, and that was back in the early 2000s. So you guys can revisit. You're perfectly okay in revisiting
What you say
it.
you would do, and we're not doing it. So I don't understand why it's in here. We say we will maintain some learning centers. We're not maintaining
So we
the
need to
learning
do
centers.
away with
We
it.
say we will maintain this and this and that, but we're not doing that. So I guess my point is, why do we have it when we're not doing it? You follow me?
Update it.
No, I am following you.
So I was trying to figure out, I was just trying to find background history on it, but that's one thing we discussed, and so we took commitments and covenants out.
Before you go to that part, on the, at the very top, the vision statement,
Okay, so this is
Yeah,
this is particularly
because
controversial.
I
and this
thought,
is,
I thought we had a,
we
Yeah,
do.
we do.
Okay.
We do.
all right.
And so, and let me explain my thinking there.
okay.
I have heard for an awful long time us make excuses for our students because they don't have the same kind of supports that you see in a district like South Lake or a district like Highland Park. Our kids are poor. They're first generation. They're from generational poverty. Whatever, any kind of excuse you want to make for it, this is the reason why we're not as good. And in fact, that same excuse pervades basically every large urban system in the United States. This is not a DISD problem. And you compare fairly high-performing urban districts. So you look at, say, Houston ISD, which is, I would characterize as higher performing than us because they outscore us in just about every category. But yet, if you look at their student achievement numbers, their commended rates for their students, they still pale in comparison to South Lake or Highland Park. And if we, this institution, the Dallas Independent School District, I think we're the 14th largest public school system in the United States. And we are, I think, probably one of the top 100 most important institutions that exist in the United States because of the scale of our operations and because of what we do, what our mission is. Because our mission, we're not making widgets. We're making kids members of our republic. Like we're taking these little bundles of energy and transforming them into thinking citizens. And for us to say we're going to allow discrepancies to exist with our kids. We're going to allow our kids as a whole to do less well than the kids in South Lake and Highland Park as a whole. I think is unacceptable for the future of American democracy, and I think it's unacceptable for us as a board to have a set of goals that would say we're going to be the king of the idiots. We're going to be the best urban school system in the United States. Still means we're worse than a huge number of suburban school systems. And I think that we've got to come out and say it. We've got serious problems. I mean, you grow up in Highland Park, that's a different world than growing up in the Grove. And I mean, I see it. I've seen it for a long time. I've been volunteering in this district for a long time, and you got kids that deal with stuff that I never had to deal with growing up. But we can't make excuses for that. We've got to commit to figuring out what we're going to do to arrange resources to never let these kids fall behind, to get them so that they're as good as the highest performing school systems in the state, regardless of income. And so, Trustee Nuttall and I were talking about wealth, the word wealthy, and
I just, that word wealthiest, and then putting a number to it, because kids can't wait to 2030 for us to become the best. We have to become the best tomorrow.
Can I offer a
Well, I was just saying, my thing with wealthiest, I couldn't. Because Olivia wakes up every morning not knowing that she's not the smartest girl on the earth. She doesn't know that she's not smarter than the kids in Highland Park. I mean, and I remember my parents growing up in Alabama say they didn't know they were poor. They just didn't know that. So I think children don't know that there's some, as they grow older, they may know that somebody's better than them, but kids don't know. They have Texas like 48, 49.
If other than NAEP, you don't have a national comparison, and NAEP is only, what, 4th and 8th grade?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would feel more
And it's only
comfortable
reading
not
math.
having 2030 on there.
I don't want 2030.
How about next year?
I mean, I just think we just
But-
don't need a defined date on it.
And Mike, I understand your reasoning. A few years ago, I talked about Dallas having a 14-year plan, starting with pre-K
Right.
through graduation. And as some of you may recall, with the commit compact that we're trying to work on, they're actually starting at birth. There's a group or two that's looking at 0 to 3-year-olds.
Yep.
So
Well,
the idea is catching on that we start earlier, maybe not from the school district, but as a collaborative
Yeah, I mean,
coalition.
we are, we're a funding resource that has $1.6 billion a year. I mean, that's what we are, and we can direct those funds. We have a great deal of discretionary control over how we direct it. We don't have total discretionary control, but we've got a good deal of control over how we direct those funds, and so we can make investments that that really just don't let these kids fall behind. We can do that, but that means very serious changes. I mean, that's not an easy thing to do.
But back to what I was saying earlier, the thing is, if it's not like, we get these statistics, and we're looking at overall that they're not doing this or not doing that. But again, what I saw going to those 3 schools, I saw that there's areas there that you can obviously tweak, because if the science teachers aren't
Right.
doing their job, if the math teachers aren't doing their job, am I right?
It goes
Oh,
back
yeah.
to the leadership in the school.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Leadership.
It is the leadership. In other words, if you've got a principal that's a one-trick pony, and that's all they can do is one thing at a time, and we don't need a one-trick pony in the schools.
Okay, let me focus y'all back in. Let's start. So we agreed to performance what was the highest achieving school district in Texas. Take out 2030. We're gonna go in and we're gonna put, okay, you're gonna have the mission statement. Should the vision and mission, should it go vision, your vision, then your mission, or is your mission and your vision?
I prefer to be switching.
So
vision
first
first.
of all, it's gonna be vision first, and then your mission, and then we're gonna go core beliefs. So what do we believe in? We believe, this is what the board believes. We believe that, okay, go to the first one. The first belief is we believe that engaged parents and guardians that promote and support education are the most important factor in a child's educational success.
I understand that. I've kind of kept quiet.
Can't hear you.
We work, hello?
No,
So we work very hard on these, and I'm all for revisiting all this stuff, but the data actually shows that educators do have the most powerful impact on students. It is not the parents. In fact, there is no data. If you look at the research, there is absolutely no data on the amount of engagement of parents. There isn't. If you look at the research out there,
Well,
there isn't. But there is on educators. And the vast majority, if you look at how impactful a teacher is, and this data is out there. If you look at the Ed Trust data that shows, if you have an ineffective teacher, it
For
will
2
take
years,
2 years.
then you've ruined the life of that
Right,
kid.
you ruined the life of that kid. So that's why when we wrote these, the core beliefs we worked on, we said that we believed at the time, the board, again, there are only 3 of us left from that time, that educators have the most powerful impact on student achievement because that's in fact what the data supports. The other thing that was important that we talked about, because this was not done in a vacuum, and I assume that we're not all idiots, so we actually did think a lot about this and did spend almost 2 years thinking about this, was the fact that, we can't always count, as Bruce said, on our parents being there. We have, 5,000 homeless kids?
I mean, we can't count on parents, and the other thing I wanted to kind of redirect a little bit was the fact that, in fact, Hippie, Avance, y Escuelita, those aren't our programs.
Yeah,
Those are external programs.
We make investments
that
in those programs.
We have cut back significantly on the investment in those programs, which is unfortunate, because they are great programs that I think are extremely valuable. And, you know, those programs are going through hard times, so they're cutting back too.
Yeah, but you
that's
understand
unfortunate.
a reduction in investment in those programs is consistent with the belief that educators are the most impactful element in a kid's life. Because those programs are parent investment programs, right? And they're not. I wouldn't call them parent engagement, because I don't think that parent engagement is too narrow a concept. It's having parents that encourage their kids to strive.
Okay, Karen, let's go. Can we say a mutual agreement? Can we say we believe that education has the most powerful impact on student achievement, what came up, but then add, we believe that engaged parents and guardians, everybody go to AEA, That's the original current policy.
The current version of AEA
have
is
the
where all
policy
these
that
things
will
are.
change. Okay, we believe that educators have the most powerful impact on student achievement. We keep that, but add, we believe that engaged parents and guardians that promote and support education is the most important factor in a child's educational success. Can we agree to disagree or agree to add that?
I would say are a critical factor.
Well, okay, Mike, this is Mike and Elwin. Critical factor, that we believe that engaged parents and guardians are a critical factor. Where would you put that?
Well, here's
the most critical factor?
Here's a question. If you have in a reduced funding environment, if you have the opportunity to keep funding for Hippie, Avance, Concilio, and reduce funding to teachers, do you do that? Or do you do reduced funding for Hippie, Avance, Concilio, and keep the funding for teachers? Because ultimately that's the distinction in terms of our prioritization here.
Yeah, but I can see both sides. We do believe that educators have the most powerful impact on student achievement. Because I can tell you from my youngest child, second child didn't get a whole lot than the first child, and she's very, very smart on 10th grade level and 3rd grade. But it was her educator that really, I supported it at home, but I didn't read in the building. I didn't do all that with the second child syndrome.
Could I ask?
So I think we should add this.
Could I just bounce this off of y'all?
Mm-hmm.
On the engaged parents, we believe that engaged parents and guardians that promote and support education can be an important factor in a child's education success.
Well, what if we just add that under the bullet that we believe that educators have the most powerful impact on student achievement? We're saying we believe in both.
I do believe in both fundamentally.
Well,
it's just a question of where we have a funding
because
discrepancy.
it takes into account, I think what Bruce was talking about, we've got, 5,000 homeless. So, I mean, they can be, but you know what, the bottom line is, our teachers and principals still have to educate even if we don't have engaged. So it kind of gives us some...
Can be, and
can be an important factor in a child's educational success.
If they choose to play a role, they can be, because
yeah, they can be.
We do have a lot of kids that parents are not engaged.
You got kids that rise out of these situations. There's
I
no
think
dispute
to me
in
what it does is it sends a message to, or at least on my part, it sends a message to the community that we do value a parent's participation in education.
I think it's not just, we don't want to just send that message to the community. We want to send that message to the organization from a budgeting decision-making standpoint. I mean, we defunded Concilio. It was at 21 schools last year, and it's now at 1 school. And that is like a catastrophic decision from my perspective. But that is consistent with the belief that parents are less important than educators, because we saved educators as a result of that decision.
So we
made a lot of other decisions. But
well,
can I just say something that's important that you said about sending the message? So another thing before we kind of walk away from it, when we did this 2 years ago, we were then also supposed to have a communications plan and kind of make sure that the entire school district knew how this worked and reached out to the community and did all sorts of stuff. And frankly, we never did.
Right.
So if we're going to go through this exercise again and are actually going to do this, I think it is critical that we also put in place the communications plan to make sure everybody in the organization understands it. And if we're going to realign the budget to follow this, then it should also do that. Again,
So it
you
all
know, and
ties
I'm
together.
I'm as at fault as anybody else about whenever I had a community forum, I didn't put these things out in front and say, hey, this is our new vision, our mission. I mean, when was the last?
This is short. I
We
like
came
it.
up with a new mission statement. I bet you if you asked the 21,000 employees of the school district what our mission is, I bet you 90% of them would tell you our old one, or more,
Or not know anything.
or not know that we even have a mission.
What's our mission?
So,
Educating students for all success.
But did you know it? Yeah. Oh, okay.
She's using that normally.
Because we have to have it posted on our room whether it matters
Okay.
or not.
Okay.
We have
time
to-
is
that's one of our
essence here, we don't
check
have, so we're gonna put
That makes
vision
sense.
first, mission second.
Could we, on this part, could we put effective teachers and principals first, motivated students second, and then engaged parents third?
So you wanna put, we believe that every student can perform,
I think,
I mean, just-
honestly, I think that's fine. And-
or we believe
No.
that every student can achieve at the highest level as
Let's,
long as students themselves are motivated to achieve.
I think trying to wordsmith it right now might be kind of.
Well, I'll kind of reach out to folks and
Okay.
see what we want to do.
Just look at it.
I wasn't really interested in reinventing the wheel. What I was most interested in, I think, can be boiled down into that pie chart down at the bottom. The idea is that, philosophically, what's the most important thing for a kid to succeed? Is it their parents? Is it their teacher or educators? Or is it the kid themselves? And so, you start to think, well, okay, so early in life it's probably the parents, and then, the teacher begins to kind of take a factor, and then as the kid gets older, it's definitely the student. But I think what we as an organization have to somehow get our heads around is all three of those parties are 100% responsible for success.
It's a three-legged stool,
Right.
Mike.
And if one of them falls, the whole stool falls.
So can y'all?
Is there a reason why you guys didn't just wordsmith the current?
No, and in fact, what I'll do is I'll do that to make this easier. I'll just go back and take the existing AEA
Okay.
and make a few tweaks to it, kind of consistent with that.
I thought we were doing AE.
Well, because
Well,
AE
you look at AE and AE local. Is there a reason why you have two separate ones? We didn't.
probably because we didn't want to mess with the commitments and covenants.
Okay, so we
Well-
need one.
Well,
'Cause it
one is
kinda
more
confusing.
global. The vision, the mission, and the goals and everything. I think that's more global. That's AE. AEA is more strategy.
Right.
How do we get there?
Well,
Now, I don't know, and Kay or
Kay.
or Dino, I don't know that we have to have them separate. I don't know. Between
We
A
have to
and
have separate,
AEA.
Faye is who we need to ask.
because what we can do then.
Faye is really who we need to ask.
Okay, we'll ask Faye about it, but what we can do is put the vision, the core, if you look at it like this right here, vision, mission, core beliefs, and our commitments on one page. We're taking,
That would be AE.
that would be AE, because y'all have mission on AE, but y'all have
Right
vision
there.
on AEA.
Fair that. It's not y'all. It's us.
We're in this boat
Okay, now
together.
we-
20 months now.
Okay, okay, I'm sorry.
You've been here longer than me.
We have vision on AEA and then mission on AE. Is it okay to put mission and vision, core beliefs and commitment all on one policy?
Right. On AE.
On AE.
And then AEA will be the strategies.
Well, the way it is now, AEA has vision, core belief, and commitment.
Right. We're
But we
changing
can
all that.
Then the strategies, that's where you will put, we will committed level kids,
Yep.
by 85%,
So,
kids with numbers.
to follow Trustee Blackburn, what I'll do is I'll take AEA's portion that's relevant to the new AE and kind of come up with a draft and send that out to everybody.
That's fine.
And then AEA would be our next point of conversation. So for all of y'all, you've got an AEA with you that is a draft version of the new AEA, and it's got a lot of the same stuff in there that we had before, but it's got some fairly substantial differences.
This is the new one?
The new one, yeah, it's 6 pages.
Okay, now this says 3/21/2011.
Well, it's just because I didn't change that in the
Oh,
front.
okay, so this is Mike
Yeah.
Bernadette.
Yeah. Also, once again, on the commitments and covenants before we, I looked at and read it. Maybe we need to ask Faye about, or how do we do that?
Well, Ben's already told us. I mean, it's just a matter of if we
Just
want to
change the
keep it
policy.
or just we
It's
change
your-
the policy.
it's your policy.
But before you move off of AE,
Okay.
a special request on number 6, change.
K6,
No, on.
No, bullet number 6,
Bullet
page 2.
6, change focus on kids, change that to students.
Well, I think what I'm going to try to do is per,
Okay.
I'm going to try to go back to the original language so that we don't
Okay.
totally rehash this.
And then on bullet 4, the second bullet,
Uh-huh.
when it says, "We commit to bring the resources to bear needed for each child to do so, recognizes that unequal needs require unequal resources." I think if you could look at that again, because I think in theory it sounds good to say, okay, this child is, all right, we're going to do whatever we can to give the resources to this child, but I think you also have to keep in mind that you got 150,000 plus kids that at some point you've got to make a decision on how those funds are spent.
Yeah, well, I
So,
agree.
and
We-
you need to give a sensitivity to the whole, equity in the resources.
yeah, and Charlotte Mecklenburg has a really good system on it.
I'll duly noted.
Okay.
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 Otherwise, good job.
Brief overview of AEA.
AEA. So you have some of this, again, delves into the, when I started this conversation, I talked about, I think that there's 2 things that we need to do as a board before we start this superintendent process. One is come up with exactly what, we want to do, which is both the goals, AE, and then the sort of the specific hows of AEA, but also evaluating the superintendent, how we're actually going to evaluate this prospective employee. I think we have kind of figured that out just to demonstrate to prospective candidates that we got our ducks in a row. So the first 2 paragraphs kind of talk a little bit about that, but I don't think that they get into enough detail there. I'm going to skip those first 2 paragraphs, though.
But if I remember correctly, Lou, help me out here. When we, in the last superintendent, there's some kind of negotiation that goes on with the evaluation tool between the superintendent and the board. So
there is.
They're going to come to the table with what they want.
Well, and I think, one of the basics that we would ask any of these folks to come up with is, I want to see your 30-day, 60-day, 90-day action plan. And I'd like to see that during the hiring process to demonstrate what kind of thought they really have in it. That's certainly going to be part of this, but I just think we have to have kind of a discussion around that to understand what we're getting into. So the theory of action and then the bullet points after that are the real meat of this policy. So the theory of action has not changed markedly, but it has changed in a couple of specific areas. And it's changed in a couple of these areas based upon some conversations that I've had with y'all. So there are 2 new bullets added, because we had managed instruction with earned empowerment. And what this has changed to is managed instruction individually paced. And
Explain that.
And rather than earned empowerment, it's just outright empowerment. And then we added 2 bullets. So the idea behind the individual pacing option is it gets to these broad discussions that you hear all of these great educational thinkers, and we heard our former superintendent talk about schools of the future and what school is really going to look like moving forward. And we have a school system that groups kids by age, and we give them a kind of a factory-based education. A bell rings, they go to a new subject area, and they proceed based largely upon their age. We know enough about cognitive development to know that not all kids advance at the same rate. Some kids, kind of bloom quickly and then level off, and then they go through fits and starts. In different subject areas, they go through different speeds. Then you also think about all the technology options that are out there, virtual schools, and what that really means and what that's all about. And the whole idea, that as I've sort of boiled it down from a lot of these technology options and a lot of these high-performing sort of alternative ways of delivering school, is that pacing is kind of what is critical. You think about a teacher who has 20 or 30 kids in her classroom, and 5 or 10 of those kids are a year or 2 behind, and 5 or 10 of those kids are a little bit behind, and 5 or 10 of those kids are right where she wants them to be, and then maybe 1 or 2 of them are ahead. And so if I'm a really good teacher, what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach to one little subgroup, then another little subgroup, then another little subgroup, and then round robin, constantly spreading that around to try to get all those kids where they need to be
I'm going to stop you right
at the
there
end of the year.
because what you're talking about, you can do it with up to about 16 kids. And once you get past that magic number of 16, it is virtually impossible
Right.
to individually teach. And so there's a money factor there. Can we get a 16-to-1 ratio?
And
in the
so,
classroom?
this is really kind of what you compare, say, our system to Finland or Singapore and Korea, and what is happening is the kids that come into those classrooms are largely homogenized. They're coming in at roughly.
So you're talking ability group.
Well, and I wouldn't even necessarily ability group it, but sort of accumulated skill level. I don't think it's appropriate to track kids at all. I don't think, in fact, that the fact that we have kind of AP courses and then you got kind of normal courses and then you got sort of special ed courses, I'd love to blow all that up and you just offer the highest possible curriculum to all the kids. And some kids just take longer to get there. But what I think that we sort of philosophically need to get to is the recognition that individualization of instructional delivery, I think, is key, but we can't afford to do it because we can't afford a 1-to-16 ratio. So what other options do we have at the table to do that? We in fact, are pursuing one of those options right now. Reasoning Mind is being rolled out in second grade at all of our classrooms, and that provides the ability to individually pace instruction.
Is it computerized?
It's computerized.
Okay.
And there's the Khan Academy, and there's some other that are like that. But there are other ways to do that logistically. Like you said, you can try smaller classrooms. You can try to constantly regroup kids. But I think that philosophically, we have to recognize that that's part of our problem. Part of our problem is we're grouping a whole bunch of kids that you can't teach them together.
So there's not a commonality.
Yeah, and so we have to somehow figure out how to solve that problem at scale in our system. Otherwise, the job of teaching is too freaking difficult. Anyways, that's the whole idea behind adding that individual pacing option to it.
What's your
The individual pace, it sounds like you're describing what we already have as instructional coherence. Because it talks about, we recognize that all schools are not the same and all students are not the same. And so we already have some of that in our current policy.
I would be very reluctant to put individually paced in the theory of action, because I think it looks like we're going to expect our teachers, regardless of their class size, to individually instruct every kid. I mean, to me, that's, if I were sitting here as a teacher, it's like, okay, they're going to tell me what to do, and now I got to individually pace these 28 kids.
What I don't want to do is I don't want this to devolve into some way of tracking the kids.
But you know what? On the better teachers, if you've got a teacher who's teaching, and I've said this all along, if you've got a great teacher who's teaching AP classes, they are great. You know what? AP kids can make a brick look smart. But if they're really that good, then they should be teaching some of the kids who are at a struggling level.
Right.
So, I mean, if they're that good, they should be good either whether it's high-level kids or low-level kids, and spread that talent out. I don't think any teacher ought to be sitting there teaching, well, I teach all of the AP classes.
How do we, from a standpoint of policy, how do we communicate to our...
It goes back to the principals. It goes back to the principals.
Do we communicate to our senior leadership team that we want them to do this? That we want them to figure out how to address...
I think a lot of the executive directors are already very much aware of that. And
they're
doing that.
They're aware of how that work, and they are going in and changing some of that, where that great teacher who just want to teach AP are being able to teach.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the concept of being able to deliver instruction at the level that the kid's at. So you're talking about ability grouping or the use of technology.
Well, if the kids are not divided out, Mike, you can only do the individualized if it's about 16 to 1. Once it gets past 16, you just
even then, you're still wasting the kids' time. Even if it's 16 to 1, you're wasting fewer kids' time.
If you've got 16 kids in a class and you've got some, let's say you got 4 or 5 computers, you can do a lot with 16.
You can do it, if our teachers take a 25% It's like we could have 25% more teachers.
Right. Well,
I'm just doing the math.
Let's do the math.
I'm just doing the math, folks.
Don't say
So
that.
it's right. I'm just doing the math.
Okay,
No, so
Mike,
I
can we
think-
get this, board members, can we agree that you send this policy to you, you review and get your comments and get it back, because it's 11:15
Yeah,
and our time is up.
this is gonna take a little while to
But
digest.
Y'all done some good
Take.
work. It's, you know, if we can change some things because of this discussion, I think it's healthy.
Give it to them.
Yes, ma'am.
In your notes, maybe highlight what you changed in the old policy, the new policy, so we'll know what's changed.
That'll be hard.
Faith,
Yeah,
Faith can do it.
I can do it.
No, Faith can do it. Is that a problem?
No, I got it. Got it going. Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
All right, what are we on?
we have proposals. Bruce, did you want to read it? You want to run with this one? You want to run with this one?
Which part are we on?
You're looking at
Let's skip down to the proposals. We need to come to a point where we can look at the proposals that we have received
For
the search firm.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, I'm moving on.
All right.
We have them from several search firms. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at them. I don't know if you've had a chance to do your own research about them. I did give you information that we received from the Boston group, and they have their ideas about, I think, maybe 3 of them. And those 3, well, I'm not going to interject my thoughts. I did ask the purchasing department to deliver all of the proposals that were sent, even though they gave us a ranking. I didn't. That ranking is not to say that those are the number 1 that we should look at or the number 2 that we should look at. They were simply giving us their way of looking at any kind of proposal that comes in. I think 2 or 3 of them were left out because they did not submit MWBE information. But that's just the way the purchasing department operates. If you leave something out of your proposal, you're automatically disqualified. So
Yeah, it's just a compliance, right?
Right.
If
it's
they
just
comply with the
compliance.
RFP.
Yeah. So, and in this case, I'm not really concerned too much about the MWBE anyway. I'm more or less concerned that we get a good firm that's going to do a good job for us. So, looking at the proposals that we have received, and if we need to look at it some more right now and talk about each one of them individually, we can.
I do know the PRO Act just got hired by Charlotte Mathematics.
And that's something else to consider. And
I had got the firms that applied for the Charlotte position, because they have open for superintendent, and three of the firms that applied for us applied for them.
But you know what, that could be a good factor, because that means
Yeah.
they're gonna have quite a few candidates in the
And
pipeline.
PROACT was the one, they interviewed on August the 23rd and 24th,
Yeah.
and they hired PROACT.
So Charlotte gets the best one, we get the second best one?
no,
Not necessarily, I mean.
Well,
it's
then it
different.
depends on what you
I'm
look
just
at.
saying FYI,
The
the
better-
PROACT, Charlotte
yeah.
PROACT just got hired by
The
Charlotte.
better firms are going to be highly sought after, and just know that the larger search firms have more than just a few people working for them. They have consultants from all over the country. As a matter of fact, the way I've looked at them, they appoint consultants to work in certain regions of the country or in certain states because they have more knowledge about that area. How about if we just kind of go through and just look at each one of them? And the first one is Hazard, Young, and Atai and Associates. Anybody have any thoughts, pro or con, about this company?
Did we all get this from Boston Consulting?
Yeah, and I'm
You
looking
know,
at
they
this.
said Hazard Young, they said nation largest executive search firm serving public school district. Search includes non-traditional hires, they have a strength in larger urban districts with option to monitor performance up to 2 years after superintendent is in place. Best practice search, Fort Worth. And best if Bill Attell comes out of retirement to lead the search.
Yeah, I read that, and I thought that was a very positive. They were my second choice, but they were my number. I kind of rated mine like 1, 2.
Well, who did you rate one?
I put as my number 1 Ray and Associates, and I noticed it's on this Boston
They
thing.
did Charlotte last year, but I'm wondering why they didn't hire them back this year.
They did Charlotte last year and the soup's already gone?
No, they, the best, whatever the soup, they hired the Charlotte soup that's retiring now.
Right.
And also,
Oh,
they
I see.
applied again with Charlotte, but Charlotte picked PROAC.
Okay.
So that's.
Well, I thought it was impressive. It said recognized by the School Administrator Journal as one of the top search firms of the country. I liked them because they're big. I liked Hazard and Young because it said non-traditional. I mean, I would not be opposed to non-traditional.
Opposed to that either.
But
Now,
it-
PROAC did the
PROAC-
current search in Detroit.
Okay, let's stick with Hazard. Any other thoughts about Hazard?
Any one of those
About
three.
the hazard, I mean, the materials were very good. They, they seemed to answer
A lot of the questions in terms of how they would interact with the board, in terms of a plan, in terms of, getting, what we think, what we need from us. And so, I thought it was a fairly complete proposal.
You want to bring them in for an interview, Dr. Blackburn?
I would like to see
We
Hazard
could.
and Young and a team.
Mike, you going to tell your thought that you want to?
Well, my.
About Hazard.
I'm not a big fan of any of these firms.
Well, and I know that I've talked to you about this, and you wanted to go like really bigger, but we're going to pay like what, 300,000 maybe for a CEO, and I think if you go much bigger, these guys pay their CEOs millions of dollars, and we can't compete with that. I mean, a lot of the really big firms.
I think we can. We run an organization that's got $1.6 billion annual budget. So
but we're not going to pay our CEO $1 million. I mean, otherwise we're going to get hung out.
No,
dry.
but from a search perspective, this is the single most important employee that we're going to hire. That's actually the only employee we're going to hire, one of two. But this is the single most important employee within the district, and I think that it just gets back to my view of our district. Our district is one of the top 100 most important institutions in the country of America. I mean, it is, and I don't think we should be going with anybody but the absolute major league players for this search.
But Mike,
Well,
the
we
major
did
league
the
players,
RFP and it was posted, and
they didn't apply.
I know, and so part of me wonders is it they didn't apply because they think we as a board are a bunch of misfit children and we have to convince them
I think
otherwise.
it has to do with the
Or is it because we didn't communicate with them that we're willing to pay top dollar?
We're paying top dollar for a
Well, but
superintendent.
those usually have, those kinds of search firms have a set fee. It's like a fixed percentage of what the
usually a
total
third
comp
it's
is.
third of the comp.
And to them, that's nothing.
Yeah,
Right.
we're
They're not interested because of the exposure of having to work with the Dallas School Board. That's one, clearly. And
Sure.
number two has to do with the fact that there's not enough money in it for them.
Well-
When they're doing $1.5 million, $2, $3 million searches, they could do one for a CEO position, or they could do 10 of these for, $30,000.
When I look at this list from the Council of Great City Schools, so we've got a couple of folks that are on this list, right? Hazard Young and T is on there, PROAC's on there, Ray and Associates on there. Those, from my perspective, that's easy. Let's bring all three of them in. They're at least worth a conversation. But I want to know why the really big names on this list didn't apply for us. Corn Ferry's on here. We didn't get anything from them. Hydrick and Struggles, who did Houston search last year, 2 years ago, they're not on the list. Hamilton, Rabinovitz, and Altschuler aren't on the list.
What
These
is
are,
Houston paying their superintendent?
I don't know. Does anybody know?
we're talking about the search firm right now.
No, I understand
But
that.
it's a function.
But like they were saying, is that we're not going to be paying somebody $1 million, so it's not worth it for them to get involved with our search.
I don't think Houston's paying $1 million.
No, that's why I asked.
And I think there are other factors as to why these firms didn't bid on this, and it gives me pause that we don't have the absolute biggest and best brands in search interested in Dallas, because what that makes me think is we're, as a result, not going to have the best prospective superintendent candidates interested in Dallas.
And would you say that headhunters, executive search firms, tend to choose their niche?
Oh, yeah.
And these companies, their niche, at least except for one, seem to concentrate on superintendents, and one or two of them also go down a step and look at the chiefs or executives of the school district. So their niche is education, it's in school districts. Another firm may decide to look at Fortune 500s, and that's all they work with. But that may be their choice to look at that niche.
I'm with you, I'm fine bringing in those three firms for
I would like to
discussion.
see TASB. Can we interview TASB?
I think TASB's an also run. I think they're not up to our league, frankly.
I think they're good for little
For
districts.
small
in Texas.
districts.
Small district,
No, they're great for Texas little.
For
The
little
largest
districts.
district they've done that I know of is Irving.
Okay.
That's about
Yeah,
25%.
I think that we need somebody that would go national.
So I hear what you're saying, Dr. Blackburn. I'm with you 100%. I'm just letting y'all know that I have grave concern that just because who didn't show up to the party is an indication of us as a group. And I don't know what do we as a group need to do to convince people that we are for real, that we are interested in the single best superintendent on the planet, and nothing less.
What keeps us from somebody like Lou contacting these firms? That's why are you not considering us?
I think that's a good idea.
One of the things that I'm concerned about is our past track record. I mean, we got a terrible history of bringing in some of the worst superintendents.
Right. Now, trustees, just so you know, we received 7 or 8 proposals. We can reject all of them and start all over again. Will they give us what we want?
Right, and I don't know that it will. I mean, if we could go back out to RFP to bid again, and all these big names could still ignore us, and so
you have to let those big names know that we might be interested.
Yeah,
and
I
then
agree.
they have to say we might be interested
If
also.
we don't ask, we don't get.
What do you think the big names just gonna go after the same people? I mean, PROAC's gonna go after? I mean, because
search it's driven by your network, and so think, for example, for a second about non-traditional candidates, right? So if
Hazard and Young does.
Yeah, if I'm interested in a traditional superintendent search, then I'm going to go look at all the superintendents, and I'm gonna have this network of conversations with sitting superintendents from all the major districts in the country and their chief lieutenants, because those are the people that are going to become superintendents. But if I'm interested in non-traditional, then it would be highly advantageous if I had a broad network of associates outside of the traditional realm. And if I haven't cultivated that personally, I won't even know to reach out to them. So there's a huge overlap in pool between these firms, but there's also some non-overlap between the firms, and that's where the difference really is.
So you have to have a search firm that would know who might be interested
Right. Some
in
general,
the education environment, knowing that they're not going to a corporate environment, knowing that they won't have the corporate perks that come with that job.
And that comes from having a conversation with somebody over lunch 3 years ago where they're like, I'm looking to do something really important with my life. I'm willing to take a pay cut
Yeah, but
to do
you know,
something.
Mike, the other side of that, I mean, I think we have to be really careful. I mean, I think it's good that, say, Hazard, Young, and Atia are thinking about non-traditional. But I think when you start talking non-traditional, you're also talking about people who have never been in education, who don't have a clue as to what's going on.
And I'm not here saying that, because like the classic example of that is John Scully was the CEO of PepsiCo, and he went over to Apple between Steve Jobs' tenure, and he drove Apple into the tank, and he was a phenomenal CEO at PepsiCo because he knew consumer products. But he did not know technology at all. And so while he was running Apple, this fantastic leader, this fantastic CEO, drove that organization almost into the abyss. And so I totally understand. I would, even when I look at a non-traditional candidate, they have to know what good teaching is.
Well, and just because, this process is going to take a long time. We've got 7 companies here who have passed the muster, so to speak. I really think that we need to narrow it down to maybe the top 3 choices here, interview these companies, and come up with what we need to move on with the business of starting this process of getting a superintendent. I mean, these are the guys that applied.
Another twist to that could be, if you know of a search firm that deals with corporate leadership, then whichever the winning search firm is could subcontract with that
Yeah,
other
sure.
company and say, okay, we have this
Could you reach out to
pool of
Corn Ferry?
non-educators.
Reach out to Spencer Stewart, somebody.
So,
And didn't you also state that there were some companies, because they didn't do the MWBE, that they did not,
they're still in this package.
they're still in this
Yeah.
package?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought
It was
that
just
they-
in the
Yeah.
scoring.
Okay,
Yeah, I asked them to give us all of them.
okay.
So let's go on to McPherson and Jacobson. Any thoughts on this firm?
I would rather not use McPherson and Jacobson, and for the reason is that they did the Las Vegas thing back last fall, and Dr. Hinojosa.
You had me at hello.
I just don't,
Well, they didn't protect their candidates. That was the
they
main,
did
that was the
not
main
protect
problem.
their people.
Okay.
You know, everybody knew who the finalists
Do we
were.
agree upon Lou Hazard?
Say it again.
I like ProAct.
I'm just listening right now.
Associates, Hazard and Young, those three.
So, do we want to go one by one, or should we just talk
I
about
was
the
going
ones
one by
we're-
one, but if you already have your top three, let's throw those out there. I'm okay with the three that the Boston group has put out.
I'm okay
I'm
with
I'm
okay
okay with
that
those
three,
three
too.
also.
I'm okay with that too.
I mean, I know about all of them.
Yeah. Bruce?
It's all Greek to me. I'm trying to get a handle on it. I mean, these are just names.
Until you meet them.
Well, see, I went on, I mean, I just did, went on, you can Google them all, and,
And you might want to do that.
yeah, just Google them.
And you can find out what other searches that they've done.
I read the stuff, but it was.
Some of them are young companies, they have no track record, and they
don't know what
just,
you need to
I'm not willing to go out there with a
Can we,
non-track record company.
can we ask them, because if we're going to bring them in for questions, I want to ask them all the same, one specific question,
I think that's a
which
good
is
idea.
what's your average tenure, and then your minimum and maximum tenure for every school system placement with 50,000 students or more over the last decade.
And what current companies, what current cities are you working with?
Well, when we did, Lou
You
and
mean
I.
when we do the
Interview.
interviews?
Are we going to come up with the questions when we interview?
But when
Yeah.
Lou and I, we were the only ones sitting here who were on the superintendent search, and we came out, remember, we had a set of questions, and every candidate, when we interviewed them, were asked the same questions. And
It's
I-
for the interview, for the candidates or the search firm?
Well, even the search firm,
Yeah.
I think it would be a good idea, just to make sure that we're fair to each one of the
Well,
companies.
in that particular question, they might have to research, which is the reason why I kind of wanted to communicate that to them in advance.
We can let them
Well,
know
we
that.
could let,
Yeah.
but I mean, have some questions, some if we wanted in advance, and then others when we actually interview them.
If everyone could just send me your set of questions that you definitely want to have asked.
Okay.
And then we can compile that and have it ready for Tuesday. But still, we've talked a little bit about Hazard, and we've talked a little bit about Jacob, well, very little about Jacobs.
Jacobson?
McPherson,
Oh,
Las Vegas.
oh, yeah. I don't think anybody wants McPherson.
Okay.
no.
ProAct, what are your thoughts about ProAct?
I like ProAct. I think, I'd like to see ProAct, Ray and Associates, Hazard and Young.
And that is the same three that overlaps with the list that the
Yeah.
Council of Great
And
City
that's the
Schools
three
gave us.
that are,
So ProAct sounds okay with, any
I'd like-
opposition to ProAct? How about the pursuit of excellence?
Oh, so I have a conflict with them, because my firm does work for them. So
With who?
With that firm. So we're
Pursuit
gonna
of
talk about it.
Excellence.
which firm?
Oh, okay, he's gonna step out. Pursuit of excellence.
Okay.
All right. Well, I think right there, that would be, the fact that Edwin has
Yeah, that kind of,
conflict of interest. But they're
that takes care
also,
of it for
there's
me.
a company that they don't have a track record, so they're relatively new at this. I just
Yeah, that's excellent.
don't want to take a chance.
Let's go with the three.
All right, Edwin, you can come back in.
Okay.
as an excuse.
Ray and Associates,
Yes.
Yeah, they're on the list.
they do quite a few searches across the country. How about TASB?
I think they're good for in
No, I
state.
wouldn't mind bringing them in just to see what they have to say. I mean, I've gone to, to some of these, out-of-town programs, and I've gone to several of their forums. I just like to, I'd like to hear what they had to say. They claim that they'll follow you all the way to the end and almost give you a guarantee on the back end. You know, in other words, if we get in a situation and we end up losing our superintendent within the first year, they'll go back, you know.
They usually do the standard practice is for these firms to do a second search for free, plus expenses.
Y'all, we don't need to go.
I'm looking on page 7
Well,
there.
I mean, I don't want to do that. I'm just, you know, that's just my experience hearing from another group.
Yeah. If you look at page 7 of their proposal, and as I was thinking earlier, I think Irvin might be their largest search, at least on this page. Crowley was not too much smaller than Irvin.
Not in this, it's just, they're not in that same.
Yeah, I mean, they have a similar demographic than we, but they were so much smaller, they don't deal with the same sort of
The
pressures.
size really does matter when it comes to these firms.
I thought,
I'd like us to keep it to 3, just personally. I just think
Yeah,
it'd be
me
easier
too.
to work with.
Okay, what's the next one? RBL.
are you okay with that, Bruce?
That's fine.
I do not want RBL.
Okay.
They did our last search.
No, we don't want them, no.
Well, no, but let me explain why. Because
no.
when we got the material and stuff, we spent hours going through the different files, and the files were not organized. It was very tedious. They just didn't have a real concise format. It's like they just did sloppy work. Nice people, but sloppy work.
I think I have something going on.
That's just my spin on RBL.
Well, there's something the same day, same
I
time.
concur.
I think we have a board meeting.
What is that, Bernadette?
Woodrow Homecoming.
Nice. They send out invitations like that?
We don't have a board meeting.
Okay.
I remember some kind of conflict.
I thought we picked our 3.
I need to know the 3 if you did.
We Hazard, PROACT, and Ray and Associates.
That's
Lou,
good.
Lou, he needs to know
Mr.
the
President's
3.
got to tell me the 3.
Oh,
Yeah, I'll let you know later.
Okay.
I don't think we're posted to I thought
and
we-
we're going to
I thought
interview
we
these
were
companies on Tuesday?
posted to actually vote on them. But we just posted for selection, for discussion.
Correct.
Okay.
So are we going to interview companies Tuesday?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. How much time are we going to allot each?
That's if they show up.
I have a great meeting.
Bring them down.
You want to be there for the interview, Bernadette.
Yeah,
you
really
do. Yeah, you do.
Bring them down. My thinking is about a 15-minute presentation and about 15 minutes set aside for questions from us,
45
and then 15-minute follow-up, and then we got 15 minutes to transition.
Can
So
the council
45
go
minutes
to the
total.
school, send us some questions? Just send us some questions?
I can ask them.
That'd be good. And then we just
I can ask
distribute
Mike
them
to send
around.
us some. And also go back to what Mike Castley was saying. A lot of what we've done today is in response to what Mike Castley said we should do. Talk about our vision, talk about our philosophy ahead of time, so that the search firm knows what we're looking for, and especially by the time we get down to determining who we're going to bring in for an interview, we need to have a clear understanding about where we want to go. And if we expect certain things from a superintendent, that needs to be upfront and not wait until after they've signed the contract. Okay, they need to know that before they even apply. So just know that when we do the search process, we may select a search firm on Tuesday, and just know that just because we make that selection does not mean that we start posting and start bringing people in. Superintendents that are interested in us are going to want to know what we're looking for before they apply. They're going to go through a profile based on what the board members are asking for, employees ask for, community people ask for. They're going to develop one profile that the board will approve. And candidates will apply based upon our profile. If we say we want someone who's going to be more in-house, get the job done, then out and about with everyone, they need to know that. If we say we want somebody that's going to put everything in place and be out pushing the district, then they need to know that. If they know that we want academics to be first, but don't lose eye on the finance, they need to know that, you know. So let's be very clear about what we want from a superintendent. But between now and Tuesday, let's be very clear about what we want in a superintendent search firm. And if we need to know if they are willing to subcontract with a non-educational search firm, then we need to get that taken care of then. It might drive up the cost a little bit, but I'm okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is the most important decision that we as a board make, so I'm fine not skimping on cost.
Okay.
Well, the taxpayer.
Can I ask, so we
You're going to get quoted in that paper on that.
yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
Connell's writing it down.
Yeah. We will pay top dollar for executive search. The discussion around AE and AEA, which is kind of what and how, and then sort of related to that, some discussions about evaluating the SUP. I think that's all kind of tied into very early in the process.
We need to look at those two policies again. We're going to have it on the briefing for discussion, and we're probably going to discuss it even more so in October. It will be. I think we put it on there, did we not? AE and AEA?
No. Yeah,
it'll be that Monday.
I'm wondering if y'all are open, if you're amenable to doing another one of these, just because that AE/AEA discussion, it might take a while.
Rather than the briefing?
Yeah, just because that way it's kind of separate and
But if we send it over to them with the from the new policy to the old policy changes, and then discuss, and then be ready to have another one of these with our thoughts on it.
Right. That
That needs to be done before we get into the.
Like in the next 2 or 3 days, you'll get an email from me with all of the updated documentation, so we could do another one of these, next weekend or something. I mean,
with the search firm, would they I guess we will pose this question about facilitating something to talk about what we're looking for in the superintendent.
Oh yeah, it's part of their process.
They'll do that.
Okay, so they will work with us on our board meetings.
Sooner rather than later.
Yes.
In my working with search firms, from that standpoint, board members need to be very open about what you want. And they will ask you to be very, very clear about what you want and don't want. Just be clear about what you want and don't want from a superintendent. And I say want and don't want, because you may say you want all these things, but then you get somebody to have something that you don't want. Okay, it's like a relationship. There are certain things you live with and certain things you just can't live with. Okay?
We
All
don't
right.
want one with a drinking problem.
Okay, we don't want anything that we have to put up with in the past. How about that?
We just want Superman.
We're waiting for Superman. That's what we're waiting for.
Colleagues, anything else we need to go back and review, discuss?
As Bernadette puts everything away.
Yes,
She's
making it very clear she's ready to go. I think we've covered a lot today. I think we've gotten pretty in depth on some things, and I think we didn't hurt anybody's feelings today.
And I really do want to commend your leadership. Really, since I've been on the board, I think that we as a team are coming together pretty well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the team.
I thought Edwin looked like he was going to tear up a couple of times, but he pulled it together.
Well, that's why I said, I hope we didn't offend anybody, stepping on anybody's toes. But I think we did okay. And I think we're going to continue to improve, and whomever we receive as a superintendent, I think will be happy to work with us. It is approximately 11:48, and we are adjourned.
I'm not going.